you have tuned into the Python Pulse live stream, which is every second Friday of the month. And we are doing it for another year. It is 2024. This is, I guess, season 2 of the Python Pulse. We are on our 14th episode. So if you've not seen our previous 13 episodes in 2023, you have about 13 hours of content to catch up on. It's a good binge. Hopefully your January is starting out smooth. I decided to not do any New Year's resolutions this year. But if you did do resolutions this year, I hope your resolutions are still going. I hope the gym is still packed. I have not seen the inside of the gym. It is 11 a.m. Pacific time, 2 p.m. Eastern, 7 p.m. GMT, and you can find us here every second Friday of the month. And today, I have a really, really, really awesome guest. I say that all the time, but this person is really one of my homies. I love him to death. And we're going to be chatting about Flask and Playwright, but I'll let them get a little bit deeper into that when I bring them on screen. I see people joining. I thought it was going to be a sleepy stream today, but we're just getting people rolling in. If you don't mind dropping in the chat, you can drop some snakes since we love Python here. You can also drop where you're tuning in from. I want to know our breadth and our reach. I am in Philadelphia. I'm in Eastern time. Where are you from? Where are you doing your Python from? All right. And so what we do every episode, we start out with some announcements, and I got some cool announcements for you today. All right. I'm so thrilled. We're working really hard on it behind the scenes. We have Python Data Science Day. It's going to be March 14th. That is Pi Day. So we have Pi Day, PY Day on PI Day. We're gonna lean into the puns. I think we're gonna have some pie on screen. But what it is, it's a curated full day list of live stream sessions. There will be 25-minute talks, and you can also submit 5-minute lightning talks. We have some professionals from Microsoft, some of my colleagues that are going to be speaking, but we also have open community contributions. That means you or your friends or your homies. If you like data science and you do Python, whether or not you're a student, a researcher, an entrepreneur, in startup, work for enterprise services, there is a huge gamut that we're going to be covering. And then we also, since we can't cover it all in a 9-hour day, we'll also have a lot of supplemental content that'll be leading up to the event. So there is a Fabric hack together. For those who are not familiar with Fabric, Fabric is a AI data solution. It allows you to connect data from all different types of data sources, including data lake and data science. And there's a hack together that's happening in February that's also part of this culmination of events that we're leading up to. So we're really focusing on data science this quarter. And I hope you submit your CFP. I'd hope to see you there, either a lightning talk that is 5 to 7 minutes, or a full talk that'll be about 25 minutes and then allows for time for questions if you'd like them. We also have Sad Python Girls Club. If you're not familiar, one of my colleagues, Luciana Abud, started the Sad Python Girls Club with Kim Adeline. They're so fantastic, and I was so lucky to be a guest on it last year. And our guest on the Python Pulse was also a guest, has a great episode on the Sad Python Girls Club. And I'm so excited to be a co-host this coming year. So you'll be hearing me more on the Sad Python Girls Club. It's all on brand for me. I'm cheery on the stream, but I'm a sad Python girl. And I eat my ice cream and I listen to my sad music. So check out that. There's usually pretty short episodes, about 30 minutes, and they come out about monthly as we get to them. I also want to follow up with Python and Excel, super huge in the community, but I've discussed that in the previous episode. Python 3.12 is also now default Python in the Windows Store. Azure App Service now supports Python 3.12, and Azure Functions supports Python 3.11. Now, let's jump into it.
Yo, what's going on?
Hi, friend.
Hey, what's up?
I'm bringing the energy. I'm trying to push through this cold. I don't know if you can tell. I have like a stuffy nose.
It's the new year. This is the time of great sickness for
I
everyone.
know.
But that's okay. I'll try to keep the hype up as well.
Thank you. We have hype from Texas and Manchester, UK,
Ooh.
and Wilmington, Delaware, and Lesotho.
If
This
you're
is
in
great.
if you're in Texas, I hope that you're checking out Pi Texas coming up soon.
Oh,
I think their
yeah.
CFP ends on Sunday, so get a talk in.
And I've been seeing there's also a meetup group. And so I've been seeing a lot of really cool stuff coming out from Pi Texas too.
Yeah. I actually, the thing that we're going to talk about today, I gave a talk at Pi Texas meetup at virtually, of course. But yeah, that was fun.
I love this because it turns into just this like larger conversation about a subject matter expertise that you have and that you've given in a couple places. I mentioned in the opening that or I might have mentioned it, I don't know, that you've talked about this at FlaskCon. That was in December, right?
Yeah, I would say I wouldn't say expert,
You're the expert
enthusiast.
here. I'm telling you, you
Yeah,
know more than me. So you are the resident expert right now. That's okay.
I'll take that. I'll take that.
Cool. So I guess we're gonna keep this pretty casual today. And for people who have questions or are familiar with Playwright or Flask or Python applications, feel free to drop your questions in the chat and we'll try our best to answer them, or we'll learn together because this is a live stream and that's the fun of a live stream.
Yeah. So we if we're gonna jump in here, I've got some stuff set up. My screen's already showing. I see. I'm glad I
Yeah.
didn't do one last quick check on my email or anything, but I think we're good.
Oh my God, your
So,
setup is so pretty. What did
oh,
Can you talk about how you got your VS Code so cute?
yeah. So VS Code, I'm using Peacock. Peacock is the app that allows a color border around it. I used to have a background on here, but the background was like causing some friction, so that didn't work. And then
Okay.
actually, you know what? I think I don't have it because I'm in my dev container, but the I don't know what my theme is. I'm pretty sure it's Cat Pachin because Cat Pachin is like one of the best themes. So yeah, there's all that. There's
Cool.
there's another app called Theme Manager that I say, like, if you ever wonder what someone's using, tell them to install Theme Manager and it'll put it in the bottom of their window. But
Good one. Okay.
so Playwright, right? This is kind of the idea. This is where we're gonna call home for the next like 30 minutes or so. Um, I'm sure folks in the chat have probably heard of tools like Selenium. Maybe a few others have heard of like Puppeteer or Cypress. Playwright is another one of those. It's a end-to-end testing platform. It allows you to effectively mimic the act of going to your website, to your web app, and doing some things and observing the results. Now, I'm not the person that can give you the full walkthrough on all of the amazing features that Playwright has. But I will say that anything that I missed, I did give this talk at FlaskCon recently, so go check that out. I think I'm going to be able to cover everything. I got about the same amount of time, so we'll see what happens. But yeah, so one of the things when you're building a web app is often testing has to come in different waves. And I think that's actually like the best way to put it is like you have different waves of testing. You have, does my backend work? Does the actual Python code that I wrote function the way that I'm expecting it to function? If yes, cool. If not, then we should probably start there and fix some things. Does my data layer is my data layer being implemented as I expect it to? When I go to my website and I say, hey, I'm signed in as this person, can't do I access the files that or the data that I am supposed to be accessing? Am I not accessing the data that I'm not supposed to be
Right.
accessing? But then you also have other parts that make for a complete web experience. Things like accessibility, things like proper user experience. What happens when that really important button that you got to press gets covered up by some cookie thing that we've all grown to hate. So like, am I able to test all of these things? And Playwright was one of the things that like testing via the front end really allowed us to do a lot of that in this web app that we made. But also it kind of expanded. Like we were able to do more with it than we thought. And working with Flask, specifically, this also works with Django. Everything that we're going to show you, we've actually replicated this for Django, Flask, and Fast API. So even if you're not a Flask person, that's okay. But it allows you to kind of have everything in one place and test things on the back, test things on the front, test things maybe on the side.
Right.
And there's some little tricks that we've kind of discovered in that process. And you know, sometimes I call myself a professional tinkerer and expert of things that don't scale. Like there might be one or two of those little tinkerings, and maybe you don't do this on your gigantic production app, but you do this on a smaller stage.
This is the fun stuff, though. I love that.
Yeah.
Let's tinker.
All right, so let's take a look at what this app is. We're gonna do. I forgot how I do this now. You know what? When in doubt, read it out. So we got like a README here. We don't need to worry about all of that. That exists already. That's already done. Here's the command that I need that I just deleted. Okay, let's do that. Run that, see what happens. All right, boom. We're running on a local server. I click some buttons. Hey, this is the same app we've been playing with for a year now. This has been fun. Still the same app, still does the same thing. But as you can see, as I'm clicking through buttons here, we see stuff happening in the background. So we're just on.
Familiar? Is the audience familiar with the Relic Cloud chat? I would love to know. Like, we'll keep going, but post in the chat if they're familiar with Relic Cloud, because I feel like we go back to the same example a lot, but then they also get tea from us from all different places, so maybe they don't know this one yet. I feel like I see this one all the time.
Yeah, well, that's because we have 17 different variations of it that are all controlled by one repo. So like, yeah, this was a project that I picked up in the middle of last year, where we took a demo that we had and we made it modular so that basically you could configure it and deploy it however you want it, whether you want to use Django, Fast API, Flask, you want to use container apps, you want to use Azure Flexible App Service, or you know what database layer you want to use for Flask. You can even swap in MongoDB, like, and this is all being managed by one system, which we're not going to interface with at all. So this. But
that's like a pub for a very cool thing that people should check out, because it's very, very cool.
Yes, this particular flavor is the Flask application with Postgres. I believe this is Postgres Flexible Server, all containerized and deployed on Azure Container Apps. So we've got this app running, right? And if we wanted to test, like you saw me, I was like clicking buttons. Clicking buttons seems to work, except for what happens when you don't click a button. What happens when you miss one. So going in and just testing locally isn't going to be the answer. So if I go into my tests here, and those are in source tests, and we have some like local tests. First, we're gonna just show like, this is what backend tests look like. Let's see, let's test some pages here. All we have here, we're using just regular PyTest. We're not using PyTest Flask, and I'll kind of explain why in a little bit. But we're just saying, hey, you know, if I go to this, do I get 200 response codes? Cool. Hey, if I create some info here and I submit it, does that work? Awesome. And then we have these Playwright tests. And I'm not going to show you the Playwright tests just yet. I'm going to show you how we made them. And that's where I need to actually go into my terminal. And the reason I have to do them in separate places is, since I'm in a dev container, I can't access the Playwright stuff that would get loaded in the dev container. So I need to do it locally on my machine. But luckily I have port forwarding, so I should be able to still do all the stuff that I want to do with it. So that's for that,
a good note, because I've not played around in dev containers before. So that's a really good note on using these technologies together. And I like that we're starting with how you do them, because start from scratch. You don't need to show me the end of the movie first.
Yeah.
This is how I jump into the scenario. This is good.
So the way that you'd kick this off is you'd run Playwright codegen. Technically, the way that you'd kick this off is you would make sure Playwright's installed, which you can do with, pip install pytest Playwright. It should say that it's already installed. Well, actually, we're not inside the dev container, so it's not. Well, no, it should still be installed. Just make sure that is. Cool.
And a good note is that this is built on top of or in accordance with PyTest. So you also need PyTest installed. That's correct. And then it's not like a turducken or of sorts, but it's a yes ending.
Yeah. So Playwright is its own thing, and it lives across multiple languages. So there are Playwright endpoints for Java, JavaScript, .NET, all of those, and Python. In Python land, what we recommend is that people use the PyTest wrapper around Playwright. You can technically just pip install Playwright, and then you can do Playwright things. And when we do pip install PyTest Playwright, it's actually going to install Playwright as well. And I'm sorry,
this makes sense.
Yeah, so it's trash day here, so you might hear a truck driving by. I saw him out the window. So now that we know that Playwright's installed, we can actually do the next step, which would be to do Playwright. We have to install our dependencies. So we have to do install, and we also need to give it a browser. I could just say install, and it'll install all the browsers. That'll take too long. We don't got that kind of time. So we're just going to do Chromium. Chromium is the default. It's the one that it's going to be programmed for automatically. We're just going to do Playwright install Chromium -- with dependencies or with deps. So we do that. That shouldn't take much time at all. Should actually be mostly done. As you can see, it's actually downloading a Chromium browser, and it's downloading some of the things that it's going to need to do what it's doing. And that's going to be FFmpeg. You don't really need to know much about the stuff behind the scenes that's running, but it will install these. So if you're concerned, or if you have issues where you're not allowed to install things, that could be a problem. But
exactly, yeah.
Chromium is pretty common. FFmpeg a little less common, but I'm sure it shouldn't be too big of a problem. So now we're going to get to actually building some tests, and we do that with Playwright codegen.
Yes.
So we type that in, and what it's going to do is it's actually going to open up a browser. There we go. So this browser here is an actual browser, and we can kind of come over here and see that we have this inspector that loads. And I'm going to try to zoom in on this, make it a little bit bigger. There we go. Let's see if we can do this. We'll side by side them. So now, when I'm in this browser is going to be doing stuff. It's going to be doing its own thing. I'm going to set my do not disturb so we don't get a bunch of messages up here as I'm clicking away. Now, you can see here, it detected we called it from Python. So it said, oh, we can use the library, or we can use the async library, but you know what? Let's use the PyTest library.
That's the only time I've played around with it, with the PyTest library.
Yeah. And you see there's already some boilerplate here. I didn't type this in. If I type over here, I'm typing on I've got multiple keyboards. Nothing happens if I type here. But if I come here and I go, let's go into, what is that? Localhost 8000. If we open up localhost 8000, what we should see, I hope it was localhost 8000.
Did we run our app? Oh yeah,
it's 8001. I don't know why. 8000 must be already running on something else. There we go. So if we load localhost 8001, what we see now is that it's actually written some code here. It said, hey, we're going to go to this page. We're going to go to this URL. Now, as you can see, I can go in here. Let's do the same thing that we did before. Let's say I want to go to destinations. I click on destinations. I'm getting some instruction here. Say I want to go to the sun. And these are the steps that it's going to run on. Now, an interesting thing is the way that it's doing that is I have these buttons up here. These buttons are like record mode, and then you also have like click by this roll. What I tell people in my FlaskCon talk is basically Playwright, when used with PyTest, has these like 3 steps. You have go to, you have get by, and then you have expect. So
Mhm.
as you can see here, the first thing that we did was we go to and we go to our URL. We get by and we get by the role. The role is a link. The link name is destinations. We click on it. And then the last thing that we would do is we would expect. So I'm going to select here. Let's see. We can assert text. I like that one. We're going to say assert that this element contains sun. We'll just say sun. It doesn't necessarily need to have the. So now we expect this locator at this place on this page to contain the text sun. And we can do this as many times as we want to. And when we're done, we can simply click on this link. We can copy that and we can paste it into our test.py or whatever our testing file is. Now, the second part of that is this is an active browser. So the nice thing about this is I can actually go in and inspect this myself. So I can go in here and see, if we hit inspect again, we should drill in. Yeah, so we can see this. So we could say like get by role or get by ID and find something at page title and assert that it's the right header. We can make all of these different expectations based on this. And if we have any questions about it, we can just go into the page itself and inspect it. And like I said, when we're done, we just copy all of this back into our test. I want to make sure, I don't know if we have any questions yet. They're just cruising along with us. So
yeah, this codegen tool is very, very cool.
Codegen is the way that you want to, like if you're just getting started, do a couple with codegen, paste them in, and then you'll start to get a feel for what you're trying to accomplish. So
I don't want to interrupt too much, but the getting started experience, what, as you're testing, as you've gotten started with testing, maybe if you harken back way back when, what do you think is the hardest part about getting your mind around testing an application, testing a Python application? You think it's different?
I think that testing with Playwright is you run into the same problems that you run into when you're testing any Python application. Yep. A lot of the biggest challenges are, what do I test? There are some really good general rules around what you should and shouldn't be testing. One of the biggest ones is test what you've written, not what other people write. Like if you import something in, you should trust that that code has been tested. You don't need to test that code unless you're the maintainer of that other project, and then you should probably go test that code.
And go look at their test coverage.
Exactly. Right. Exactly. But when you're testing in general, I feel like one of the biggest challenges is folks either tend to over test or under test. They're either, I'm testing everything that is happening, including stuff that I have zero control over. That's when you chuck up a serenity prayer and just like keep it moving. But or they under test and they go, oh, well, I know it worked because I wrote it and I know that it works, so I don't need to test it. And that's true if you did, the add function, or you did like the sum function, or you're calling something that is, imported that's in standard Python. You don't need to test that functionality works, but you need to test that the outcome is what you expect.
I appreciate that designation. Absolutely. And if we are admitting embarrassing things in public, I am team under test. I hate testing and I have to force myself to do it. But the approach that I like, I guess, is the business-driven development one, where you're more so testing like functionalities through you do UX. And I think Playwright does really, really well with testing the business case through a function kind of thing, or through the application. So that is my lay explanation of it. But I appreciate that. Thank you so much. Okay.
Yeah.
So as I've interrupted, we'll keep going.
Oh, no problem at all. And again, with the Playwright testing, I tend to under test as well. I tend to like, it's so easy to just click all the links. Like, and the thing is, I would never want to do that manually. And that's why it's kind of good at like, if you have like, you can use PyTest as PyTest does things. And as we're looking at how we wrote things, we'll come back to that check for violations. Our test homepage is just, hey, go to our URL and verify that the title's correct. Like, there's probably 7 other things we could be testing. We could test that, you know, things are loading the way that we expect them. We could test that things are appearing on screen the way that we expect them.
Yeah.
But ultimately, for us right now, we're just testing that I can get to the homepage and the homepage works. But then we have some of these other links. Like, this is us testing our header. These are the same links that were in the header. All we're doing is saying, hey, go to the homepage, check that navigation panel, that nav indicator, and let's just make sure that there's something called request information, request destinations, request about, and then let's also verify that the URL points to the correct path. Because these are things that, again, that information can change, and it's not necessarily the end of the world if it does. We want to be aware of it. We want to just make sure that, you know, if it did change, cool. But now we don't have these like dead links on our website because things changed.
Yep.
And, you know, we do this in several places. You know, we can have, you know, make sure we can go to request info, make sure that we can actually fill out these forms and do things with them. Make sure that we have like 10 different destinations in our app. So are we actually able to go in and view these pages? Are we able to view these cruises? And this is what we're doing here is we're going to, we're getting by the role, which we're going to say, hey, go to the destinations link. Now we're going to expect this page to have the title just to verify that we're on the right page.
Yeah.
And then expect that because I'm on this page, this piece of text should be available to me. And if it is, great. If it's not, then like, cool, PyTest is going to raise an error. And that's kind of what we've done here, where we've kind of broken out our test by like functionality as it determines on the page. So we don't necessarily need to test that every single piece of data inside of our database is reflected properly. Maybe we want to test that things are being processed. Like if there's HTML inside the database, you want to make sure that HTML is being parsed properly or something like that.
That's like particularly brittle parts, right?
Yeah.
Of like the functionality. So I think that makes absolute sense on how you're being strategic on the testing of it all. I mean, even testing whether or not that title of that page includes sun is actually testing several different processes. And so the fact that it got to the page means that several things work correctly and as expected. So that makes total sense.
And there are other patterns that you can take. You can do the like, I forgot what it's like. Some people call it functional testing of like, if a user does this, the user is going to go to the homepage. They're going to log in. They're going to go to their about. They're going to make sure that they can update their profile. That is probably a test that should exist in some app that has that functionality. You don't necessarily want to just say start at the profile already logged in doing the thing. You want to make sure that each of those steps are working as expected. So the Flaskness of this, and we're gonna jump back to that. You keep seeing this live server URL that in all of these tests. So I mentioned before, we're not using PyTest Flask. This was actually kind of a consistency play on our part. We have to test multiple web servers. So if you go into it the Django way, if you go into it the Flask way, if you go into it the Fast API way, you got to write more tests. Again, we're team under test. That's probably not a good thing, but it's a thing. So for us, what we actually did was we made our own like live server runner, and it's actually really easy to do. So I'm going to kind of just run through that really quick. So we have this run server function here, and I mean, it's just doing the Flask thing, saying app.run. Django, it'll probably say, you know, manage.py. There might be a sub process that happens in the background.
Okay.
Same thing with Fast API, or maybe we're running GUnicorn and letting GUnicorn handle all that. I honestly don't remember at the moment. For Flask, app.run, cool.
Yeah, I'm following.
So then we just have this session-wide, we have some session-wide fixtures, which for those that don't know, a fixture is basically code that gets ran prior to whatever the scope is. So at the session scope, this code gets ran and this app with DB becomes a variable that I can pass in to any of my tests at the function level. And the nice thing about that is that means it's going to make all these configuration changes for us. It's going to say, create the app. It's going to say, you know, create our database, spin it up, get it running. We're actually going to do a bunch of stuff, and then we're going to run our test. And then once the session's over, we're going to do cleanup. We're going to roll back all that stuff that got done. We're going to close the connection. That way we've spun up a clean database. We've loaded it with some test data. We've tested against it. We tore it down. That way we're not testing against production. You should probably not test against production unless you absolutely know why you need to test against production. Testing against production can lead to oopsies, and we've had plenty of those. So this is where this live server URL comes in. So we're doing that database stuff. Again, this is happening as well at the session level, so it only happens one time. But we're basically saying, hey, we're going to take this value. We're going to do a multi-processing, you know, import. We're going to do some ephemeral port reservations, which actually this saved us because remember we thought it was 8,000 and it's 8,001, which is great.
Yeah.
And then we're going to say, hey, we're going to have this process that's running, you know, using multi-processing. So I believe that.
Okay.
So we're going to have our server running in a different, like in a background process.
Okay.
Again, we're going to let our test do its thing. When it's done, we're going to kill that process. So even if we're not running, like this is currently running and we went to it and we tested a bunch of stuff, I'm going to close that. I'm going to stop it. We can still run our tests. It's going to start that service and it's going to tear it down. So I'm going to do that now. I'm going to do python-m pytest. That should work. Boom. So I did all the cheap tests that are not doing Playwright things. It's now doing Playwright tests. We can see in the path there, test Playwright. And again, I stopped the Flask service. So at this point, it literally started the service up for us, ran these tests. And then when we're done, it's going to tear it back down so that we don't have to worry about it. And it looks like all our tests passed, 35 tests passed. Those warnings, we know about those warnings. That's fine.
Okay.
So at this point, we've walked through kind of here's how I use codegen to start making my tests. Once I've made some tests, here's kind of some methodology around how we would go through and actually test them using that live server. And then I think I want to make sure and pause for questions if you have any or if the chat has any.
I appreciated the way that we, especially now that we're diving in, that we started with codegen, because it does give a more simplistic and very visually focused way of figuring out your testing. And then now looking into also how you're doing live server and all of the kind of bells and whistles that you're making to have a more mature and resilient kind of testing solution. Like, it makes sense why we started with codegen, and then you can get a chance to soup it up to some more advanced level coverage. So I like that. And we also have a comment. I think it's comment or a question from our friend Alexis.
Yep.
Yeah, I think you could. Yeah, you use PyTest fixtures for integration tests. That's correct.
Yes.
Yeah.
I mean, that's a great way to do it too. Again, you set up the things that you need to set up. That way you're not having to pull in and Oh, we tested against like database. We had like multiple databases running, and like, oh, this is the test database, this is production database, and that's not necessarily a
Yeah.
bad thing, but like stuff gets expensive, and you got a lot of things to handle, and you got to make sure parity happens with schemas, and it's easier to just say, hey, same configuration, we're gonna spin it up, we're gonna do all the stuff, migrate, seed the data, tear it down when we're done, and it
Okay.
takes milliseconds. So
Yep.
awesome. So the next thing that I want to talk about is what happens when we actually have a failure, and
Okay.
let's just introduce a failure. Why not?
Okay.
That's always easy. We'll do it. We'll do an easy one. We'll just remove a letter. Um, so
Recloud.
yeah, recloud. We should get a failure. I'm glad someone enjoys the live server fixture. Yes, that was fun. Pamela Fox, who's in the chat, and I, mostly Pamela, there was a lot of fighting that that was required to get that to work the right way, like in a very consistent way. All
We're
right, so we,
thankful that we can learn from your efforts. Thank you so much.
yeah, so we have this failure, and it just says, "Hey, this failed." I mean, that's cool, thanks, but that doesn't really. We can come in and we can actually see the error message here. Hold on, let me see if we can zoom that out a little bit.
Mhm.
And it's saying, hey, we're waiting for this thing. We're checking for this was what the actual value is. So I mean, your failure results are very similar to what you would have with PyTest because it is PyTest.
Yep.
But this is a little hard to work with. So what we should do, we're going to do this and we're going to say, what is it? Tracing. I'm not going to do tracing on, but we'll do, is it tracing fail on fail, I believe? On failure. You got me second guessing myself now, so I've got to like go in and check Playwright's commands for that. I'm pretty sure it's on failure, but it might just be like on fail. Let's see. Oh, I
And
don't know.
that's a PyTest flag, right?
So since we're doing PyTest Playwright, it is a flag that is it's an argument that's donated to PyTest.
Yeah. Okay. I think Pamela says it's retain -on -failure.
Retain on failure. See, I knew it was something on failure, but thank you. Retain -on failure. So now it's going to keep running. Uh-oh. Did I do a thing wrong? Invalid choice. Oh, I can't spell. That's what it is. There we go. All right, so it's going to run this test again.
Mm-hmm.
It's still failing, as we can see here. But why it took a little bit longer to fail this time, and we'll explain why that happened. I'm guessing it's something about the command we just put in. That's probably a safe assumption. So while that's running, what we're going to see here is there should be a Playwright test result, like a test result here. And it comes with this trace.zip file that's inside of this source test, local test Playwright. And if you want to know how it's named based off of your test, like the path to the test, the name of the test, and then which browser. So if we were testing against multiple browsers, you would have each of those failures in case it was something that only happened on one of the particular browsers and not one of the other ones. Or maybe you want to test against like mobile versus on desktop. So we've got that little error and we've got this zip file now. So we're going to come back in here. We're going to look at this. We have that test results folder there. We're going to cd into that test results. And then we're going to go into there. Okay. And then we're going to do Playwright trace and we're going to trace that zip file.
Mm.
And this is kind of that power that comes. Oh, did I do something wrong? I thought it was Playwright Trace. Yeah. Let's see. Show trace. Naming things is hard.
Right?
Show trace, trace.zip. There we go.
Okay.
And now we're going to get another window that pops up. And this is a trace viewer. This allows us to actually see what the test did and where it did things. I probably should have failed on a different test that does a little bit more. We'll do that really quick. Let's fix our Relic Cloud mistake first. Let's go to... We'll say, yeah, we'll just remove that E. And we'll run X so that it fails. It stops the test as soon as it fails.
Okay.
We'll see a little bit longer of a result this time.
This is also a very like a tips and tricks show as well, because I'm learning all the flags that I haven't used before and things that I've gotten through other ways, I think. Good. Okay, great.
Yeah. All right. So we got a different test. It should be in here. Oh. All right. So we're going to go into test results. We're going to see what we have. It had, okay. Yep. CD, source, test, Chromium, the sun. Now, let's do the same thing that we did before. We're going to do show trace. This one's going to be a little bit more not involved. Oh, okay. It did some things, which is cool. So here we have on this side here, I'm trying to see if can I zoom in on this? Okay, I can. Awesome. So here on the side, we have the steps that were happening. Starts out blank page. Goes to this URL. Notice how it gave it a random port and all this other stuff. That's because of our live server running. So then we do this locator click by role. That was that get by role. That was a thing that we said, the get by. So you can see when we go to it, it actually puts a dot over that line. So that's simulating where it went. So it went there.
Okay.
Then it went there.
Oh, yeah. The red dot.
Yep. So then it said, hey, I'm looking for this locator. I can't find this locator. Like, is the URL correct? Cool. Is the title correct? Cool. Right. Go to this locator. I can't do that. Something's wrong. I don't know what's going on here. Now, the cool thing about that is, again, this is the entire DOM of this experience happening. So we can go in and inspect it again. So if we wanted to go in here, we can say, hey, we were supposed to go to page title. Page title is here. Oh, I see. That's PAG title, not PAGE title. So, yeah, that's page title. So the test is just wrong. It allows us to quickly go in and start, or maybe I wanted to go into this description area here and say, oh, I wasn't trying to find the sun. I was trying to find the paragraph that was inside of this div class. Yeah. So that's going to tell me I need to change my test. Yep. So sometimes it'll be, this isn't the sun, it's the moon. And, somehow when we clicked on the sun, it went to the moon. That's just a data problem. So then we need to go and fix that data problem. And this gives us the ability to then go in and see, and we can, again, you're doing a bunch of things. And we're actually going to talk about the fact that we're doing that bunch of things allows us to do something that is not a part of the general Playwright, but is another thing that we've added on. And this is where tinkering comes to help us. So that's where show trace is super helpful. If something's failing and you don't know why it's failing, turn on tracing, go look at that trace, and then you can actually go in and follow along. And this is all on your machine. This is all on your local machine. So you're not, you can't, believe there's a playground that you can go to on the Playwright website where you can upload a trace file and do the same thing, but you don't have to. You can do everything right on your machine, absolutely free. Cool. So that last thing that I was wanting to show was I talked about all the different ways that we test stuff, the different kinds of tests, functional tests. What about accessibility testing? This is actually something that Pamela created or forked a project and now has a Python package called Axe Playwright Python. That makes it so that you can actually inject JavaScript into the pages as they're loading to do accessibility testing on them. So
Axe is like just for those who may not know, Axe is like the industry leaders or just like a large player in making accessible tools or like content. I know there's FlaskCon every year. Are you familiar with the history of Axe?
So I'm not too familiar with Axe's history, but what I will say is the Axe extension is ran by a company called DQ Labs.
That's it.
DQ Labs is, yes, it's a very big name in terms of accessibility compliance.
Yep.
They have a really popular accessibility extension, which I think is like the same extension that's being injected into here. Cool. And the nice thing about it is it tests against multiple different accessibility standards. There's more than just one. I know the big one is WCAG, and I think that's from the U.S. government. So if you're working on a project that's a part of like a federal contract, there are probably some requirements towards accessibility that have to happen. Otherwise, your like site could get shut down. So that's a big deal. And Axe is also used by the Microsoft Accessibility Insights extension too. So they've kind of made this API that you can interact with and access and use it to test the accessibility of any website, not just your own, but with the extension, you can go to any single website and go, let's see how we're doing here. And, start filing issues.
I remember when it was like only... Oh gosh, maybe I'm wrong, but I remember when it was only Lighthouse was the way to do it, and then there weren't other tools.
Yeah, and Lighthouse was mostly focused on performance, not necessarily getting things correct. So the way that we're using this is we have this from Axe Playwright Python .sync Playwright. We're going to import this Axe call here.
Okay.
And then from here, I've created this function that is, Axe run page. And then that's going to give us a count of violations, and it's going to give us the details of that violation. So what we're basically saying is, hey, we want 0 violations on the page, otherwise raise an error. And all I've done is I've added this to each of these pages.
Yeah.
So now you should see it across all of them. I wanted to check really quick because I know that I thought there was one that was broken. All right, we've got 10 minutes left, so I'm going to try to speed round this because there's one last thing that I got to get to that's super important. But we've already ran these before. Let's insert an error really quick. And let's just we'll go to our base page, and there should be an image. There should be an image right here. There's an image at the top, and it has this alt text. That's for accessibility purposes. If we remove this, and since we're using Jinja, I'm going to use Jinja to just comment that out.
Okay.
So if we remove this, we should get an error. Now, let's see what happens. Oh, I left tracing on. Okay, that's fine. Actually, yeah, because it failed early. Let's see. Is something broken? Nope.
I love
Okay.
the bunch of exclamation marks. Stop after one failure. Excellent.
Yeah.
Thank you for letting me know. Because I would think I only had one error. And forget to leave it on.
So we're looking here and we're trying to see what it did. This didn't even get to like all of our other tests. It basically said, hey, I ran this page, I ran Axe on it, I found one accessibility violation.
Mm-hmm.
And here's the rule that got violated. And here's more information on that. And
Yeah.
here's the target. And here's the snippet of it. And
Yeah.
here are some ways that you can fix it. There's a lot of good information on this.
I'm seeing
And
like impact level critical, WCAG 2A. This is good. Cool. 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 Cool.
and it also gives you the ability to then go, and it keeps taking it to the other screen here. You can actually see this exact same information in browser form. So you can see like, oh, hey, here's the problem that you ran into. Here's how to fix it. Here's why it matters. So if you're not entirely sure why something is breaking or something is violating, like it'll help walk you through it. Now, one of the things that I did, where I want to go back and fix this because I like test passing,
Yes.
is we actually have these results. I thought we had these results. Maybe we don't have these results. I like to take these results and print them out into like a file.
Mm-hmm.
Because if I can do that, and actually I'm looking at it, yeah, I took that part of the code out because it was extra and it was for a talk.
The output is too verbose sometimes.
Yeah. Well, when you're testing like 17 different pages and doing stuff all at one time, sometimes you're like, it may not be worth it. It might be worth it in other instances. But one of the things that I did was I was able to take some of this output and save it into a file. That way, when I'm testing, I can just go and read the file. I don't have to scrub up and down my browser or my terminal. But the other side of that is this is really valuable when you're doing things like CI/CD.
Yes.
So when you publish, you can have a bunch of that information get stored in your GitHub action. And then you just take the GitHub action results, look at them and go, oh, that's what's wrong with this. I would also recommend doing that with things like linters. Like if you have linting errors, like take those linting errors and throw them in GitHub actions and have them show up there so that you can actually see what the errors are. Also, yeah, Pamela's making fun of me because of the output. Sometimes there's a lot going on here. There's a lot of information, and it's all good information. It's information that should be there, that should be present. The sad thing is, it is kind of hard to parse like this. So I was thinking maybe
all about how your brain works, though. I mean,
Yeah.
you are the champion of accessible development. You're like, I'm gonna tweak this to da 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 for my ADHD and X, Y, and Z.
I'm also an options person, so the way I would like to see it, and maybe I will contribute something to this of like, give me a really small description, and then if I pass that verbose flag, then like show me everything. But just let me know where I broke stuff and how do I fix it.
Open source contributions, yes.
Oh, absolutely.
Adopt a new puppy and write a PyTest plugin.
Absolutely. Okay, so we've been doing everything local. I want to emphasize that doing things locally is fine until it's not. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to have to cheat a little bit because I don't have this version of the app deployed, but I do have this version of the app deployed. So I can go in here really quick. Oh, I thought I could go in here really quick and grab that. I can't. So we're going to cheat a little bit more. We're going to go into our Azure portal. We're going to go to this app, and it's going to have a URL right here. See, it's the same application. It does the same thing. We don't need to know that it's Django. That's fine. So we're going to take this. We're just going to copy that URL. And then from there, we're going to go back into this test that we have. This one. So as we get there, we're going to say, hey, I want to run smoke tests. Now, smoke tests are like our other tests. In fact, in our case, they actually are our other tests, but they're like a select number of those tests because we don't want to necessarily test absolutely everything. We're going to be testing against our production website. And that comes at a cost because that means you're pushing, like you're hammering your website. We have like 30 tests here. What if we had 3,000 tests? Do you really want to be like sitting there just banging on the live website? Do you want to be inserting data, like adding records into your production stuff? No, you don't want that. That's not good.
Correct.
So we've selected tests that we just want to test some of the basic functionality. We don't want to break anything. We want to just make sure that stuff is working. So the way that we've done that is there's a few ways to do it. This one has been kind of the cleanest way. We actually name this test differently so that we have to call it directly. Otherwise, it'll just run and it'll always run. Now, smoke tests are going to run off of whatever URL you give it. So it's still going to test locally unless we tell it not to. And the way that we've done that is if I go in this conf test here, same thing. You remember how we had that live server URL fixture?
Yeah.
We're going to hijack that code. And we're going to say, instead of doing a fixture that runs on my local server, it spins up a sub process, it runs, and then it takes it down and all that other stuff. We're just going to say, hey, set your live server to this other URL. And we can do that. We're going to do that really quick because we got like 2 minutes left. We're going to do Python -m pytest. And then we're going to go to this path. We're going to say, was it tests? Nope. Source, tests, smoke. And then it's going to be called smoke tests. And then we're going to pass in that live server URL. So live server URL equals that value that we gave it. Tell it to run. And now it's running those same tests. And if you notice, it's a lot slower. But it's because it's running on our URLs. Actually, I'm going to stop it really quick. I'm going to do this, and I'm going to do tracing equals on. And it's going to run. And it's going to add some traces. While it's doing that, I'm going to go back over here really quick. And we're going to go ... out. One more time. Okay. Let's go into our test results. Let's see what we got. We have a bunch more tests now. And we have these smoke tests. So now we can do the cdn to source. That looks good. There's that trace. Let's call our show trace. When that opens, grand finale, cross your fingers, boom. We still have this same test. Notice it took a lot longer to run that first process.
Right.
But after things loaded, let's zoom in here and see what the actual URL was. It wasn't our local host anymore. So this actually went out to the web, found this website, did all those same tests that we ran, evaluated, did all the stuff that it was supposed to do, and then tore it down. So this is the beautiful thing about Playwright. It all, even that expression, it still ran. We see it ran our axe run violation stuff here as well.
Yeah.
So using the power of Playwright, we're able to test locally, we're able to test in production, and we can do the exact same things. We can test the accessibility of our production website just like we test our local and still get the same level of reporting and errors that we would get otherwise.
Awesome. Oh, that's so cool. And excellent timing.
Yeah, it's almost like we're pros.
Yeah, it's almost like this is their job. You are pro, and as I called you the resident expert, I learned a lot. We had a lot of chatting in the channels. We had some people that this is perfectly timed presentation. So I'm so glad that we got to do this. Are we ready for the exit?
I think we're ready for the exit.
Oh gosh, I didn't write down my exit. Okay, well, the exit is, thanks everybody for joining. We are here every second Friday of the month. This was another episode of the Python Pulse, and it was fantastic. I'm so glad that you got to be here with me, Jay. Shout out to Shout out to Peggy, our producer, without whom this would not be able to happen. Shout out to Peggy. And yeah, everybody have a great weekend. Bye, y'all.